So we've got our application here. We've got all these columns. And what we want to do now is get something that represents more real data. So we want these columns to be like a Kanban board, to do, in progress, in review, completed, stuff like that. And one thing we're going to tap into, and you're not really going to see a bunch of it in this lesson, but we are going to set things up for it, is semantic state that's available to us in Astryx design system. So you can tap into all sorts of colors, red, green, blue, yada, yada, yada. But then they have semantic coloring, like accent, neutral, warning, things of that nature. So we're going to try to set ourselves up to use icons and colors that we can associate with the various states of this task. Now, like I said, most of this is going to be set up, but we will get some mock data in here and turn these columns into real columns in this lesson. So one thing I want to point out is I should have had styled board columns on this guy. And there we go. Now we've got our proper columns. Okay, so what we're going to do is jump into our app. We're going to create a new file called types. And I'm just going to paste this in. Don't worry, all the code will be available to you. There will be a link in the description where you can go get all this. I just don't want to waste your time with a bunch of my slow typing. So what do we got here? We got column IDs, to do, in progress, review, and done. We've got priority, high, medium, and low. We've got a work item, which will be one of our tasks. So they all have, which column are you in? What's your priority? And so on. We have column meta. So this is going to be, metadata for each individual column. And there we're using the exact same keys in our union here for variant. So we've got neutral, accent, warning, and success. And then we've got drop target and drag state, which I'm just putting in here now because we're going to use it later. We don't need to worry about that at this moment. So now what we need is some data. So we're going to create data.ts. I'm going to drop this in, and this is all pretty straightforward. We're bringing in some icons. We're bringing in those types we just created. Again, don't worry about the drag threshold right now. I am reproducing the column width here that we also had in styles. If you saw that lesson, you know that we need to have that hard-coded in our styles. Originally, I tried to export it out of data into styles, and that's not going to work with StyleX, at least not the way that we're using it. So then we got our columns, which is just a series of column metadata. So variants and tooltips and icons and things of that nature. And then we've got our priority meta, which is a record of priority. So error, warning, teal, which is nice. And then we've got high, medium, and low. So we've got variants for each of those. Well, and that's where that teal comes in on low. I had to pick something. And then we've got a bunch of initial work items. So that's under initial items. They've got IDs, which column they're in, their priority, and so on. You will notice in each of these columns, I have this empty icon. That's so that later we can render an empty state for each of these. So if there's no to-do items, we want to have something there that says there's no to-do items, and I'm going to be using an icon to help with that. So we're going to jump over to our Kanban board, and right here, I'm going to bring in the columns and the initial items that we just created in data. And right off the bat, we can replace this hard-coded for with initial items.length. And we're going to come down here where I was mapping over this kind of make-believe, and we're going to replace it with our new make-believe tickets. So I'm going to paste that in. We are iterating over each of our columns, and then we filter out to make sure that we're putting the current item in the correct column. So we're making sure that the items column matches the ID of the column. I probably don't need to waste a bunch of time on that for you. And then we drop everything in a card. Everything's going to look fairly similar. We've got the number of items are in this column, and we list that off as tasks, and that's going to be localized. And then everything else is stuff we've already done. We've got a little bit of Xstyle going on here, a lot of design tokens. Everything's looking good. We can load that up over here. And now we get, let me zoom this out a little bit. We get our actual columns with items in them. Our light mode and dark mode still work. Our language toggle still works. And now we can move on to making these cards more full-fledged components in our application.